Hey, hey, hey. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. Listen, I am so glad y'all here. My son was born on November 15th, 1998, and that same day, Kwame Ture, um, most, I guess originally his original name was Stokely Carmichael, died. In fact, I wanted to name Khalid Kwame or Ture, and I lost out on that. But one thing that SNCC, which is the organization that Kwame Ture led when he was a young man, used to always say was that he was vehemently opposed to the concept of nonviolence resistance because he thought that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King had made a fatal error. And if you don't know, nonviolent resistance as a movement is not really about being nice or kind or just taking maltreatment. It is a strategy. The people didn't just go out into the street and just start letting people plummet them. They were trying to appeal to the social conscious, or whenever it happens anywhere around the globe, the nonviolence resistance movement is to generate media attention to the atrocities that are happening wherever you are. And the way you do that is by showing the evil nature and demeanor of the people who are upholding these systems by bringing attention to some of their horrible behaviors. Therefore, like if you see the marches in the South here during the latter parts of the civil rights movement, what it would look like was just people just kind of taking it, but they had planned for that. They had trained for that. And you listen to our great ancestor Mr. Vivian. It was interesting to hear him talk about how much planning and preparation had gone into that. But Stokely Carmichael at the time, then Kwame Ture, was like, the fatal error was here in the States that we assumed that our oppressor had a conscience. And I remember the first time he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, it is really hard to appeal to the conscience of someone who does not have a conscience. And what's fascinating is it doesn't matter what kind of situations I'm in. Um, there's always about 20% of people who are what I would call empaths by nature. These salt of the earth kind of people who just always are trying to think about how everyone can be happy, how everyone can get along, how we can achieve harmony and acceptance. And I love these people. I have no criticism of them. In fact, I believe they are the people who keep us from killing each other. And it is important to know that there are some people, edge cases, I call them, on the fringes, who have no good intention. There's, I agree that there's probably a spark of the divine in everyone, but I'm not getting in Ted Bundy's car, right? There's something that God has uniquely given me, and I believe many people have it inside. It's like a spidey sense that goes off and says, danger. And what's interesting is that while we were doing much of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work to teach leaders how to be more inclusive, how to get the best out of their people, the term folks were using was bias, that you can't, that your first thought is usually not reliable to you. But we have been created in a certain way that we have a danger sensor inside, and sometimes we have to listen to it. But here's the thing: if your danger sensor only goes off when you see a certain class of people, or it only goes off when you see poor people sitting outside the library and you feel like you got to call the police, there's something wrong with your danger sensor. But we have a danger sensor that we need to listen to, right? um because 80% of us don't necessarily think about how we can bring everyone along. We are not thinking about creating harmony. We are very much questioning and critical and, truth to power and look, tear some of this stuff down, if we need to. And I think there are benefits to being like that. I am more like that actually on Strengths Finder. Empathy is definitely in my bottom 10. People are surprised to say that because I'm always talking about empathy. But here's the thing you need to know: the dark side of the light chasers is a thing. right? Like the reason why I did this TED talk called What a Pimp Taught Me About Empathy. The reason why a pimp who is manipulating a woman into selling her body on the street and then coming back and giving him her money, or those of you who do it in ways that we deem socially acceptable. You part of a romantic relationship, you are the one who's contributing, nobody else has been contributing, it's been that way forever, and you willfully give up all your money and you got a hobo, what they call them, um I'm hobo living in your home. And because we consider it to be definitely, if it's a heterosexual relationship where you've been together forever and you have called it marriage, we deem it socially acceptable, even though I might argue it's still pimping in a lot of ways, right? Like, I remember very clearly the very first time that I didn't listen to that little spidey sense. Everything in me told me not to get in the car. I knew this man very well. My family knew him very well. He was nice and charismatic and fun, all the things. I was supposed to be catching the bus to the Landing Mall here in Kansas City. And it was a super hot day. And he was like, I'll give you a ride. Everything in me said, don't get in that car. I get in that car. And I'll shortcut the story for you, but I currently am of the numbers of people who have been raped, and have survived it and lived through it because, yes, he did the wrong thing. Yes, I'm not victim shaming, but the truth is I have a thing inside me that tells me, "No, don't touch that fire," right? And it was the first time I didn't listen to it, and I try to listen to it as closely as I possibly can. And what's interesting about what is happening right now in the world is that we're in Rucker Park, y'all. If you're not familiar with Rucker, I don't know, I got stuff over here distracting me. Holcombe Rucker was a World War II vet. He was a storied educator. Um, he lived in or grew up in Manhattan anyway. I mean, and there's a famous basketball court named after him. Now, what you should know is that I don't play basketball. I don't particularly love to watch basketball. When I was really into basketball, it was because it mattered to my son, and I wanted to care about the things, demonstrate that I care about the things that he cared about. But as soon as he wasn't playing basketball no more, baby, I don't watch basketball because it's not my thing. I'm a football person. But what I know about Rucker Park is they say you go to the website, it says they got rules. But people like Wilt Chamberlain, Kobe Bryant, like some of the world's best NBA players played basketball at Rucker Park. And you know why? Because they felt like if they could deal with the elbows and the roughhousing and the pushing down and the fouls not getting called at Rucker Park, that they could play anywhere. And what I think is interesting, about watching street ball and then sometimes even watching the national championships when they come around is that the rules that are traditionally in play ain't really in play no more. Rajon Rondo was one of my favorite basketball players when Khalid was playing. There was one game when Rajon was legitimately, he was holding on. Shaquille O'Neal, he was playing Shaquille O'Neal, and he's literally holding on to the man. He got his hands on his shoulders, holding, dangling his feet, and they didn't call a foul. Holding on, like 2 seconds holding on. And they didn't call a foul. And I remember that I'm just like, I cannot watch the NBA championships because I'm like, dang, foul. I'm yelling foul. Oh, foul, foul, foul. And I don't even play basketball. I'm screaming at the television. This stuff don't make no sense, right? But Rucker Park is named after the famous educator Holcombe Rucker. He died in 1965. And he spent much of his life uh creating basketball scholarships for almost 1,000 kids coming out of New York. And there are many people that say that his tournaments created basketball players like Wilt Chamberlain because it taught them to like throw balls and be able to like I mean, moving screens, you name it. They can play through all of it. And I feel like what's happening in our nation right now is kind of like Rucker Park. It's like ain't no rules. Everything, even the gentleman's agreements, I'm like, okay, don't don't follow the gentleman's agreements. We have assumed laws that, if you work in the White House, you probably need to be vetted. You probably need to be approved if you're in an appointed position. And we like, got enough money, you can just be wherever you want to be and do whatever you want to do. Eh, Listen, I used to say I was working at a place where we often said, when should you fire somebody? The moment you think of it. But we were thinking of people who wasn't doing their jobs, people who were inefficient, people who were using the system, people who were being unfair to their colleagues because then there was so much other work put on everybody else, right? That's what we're talking about. You don't just go into the government and say, you know what? I'm gonna just fire 500 people there, 1,000 people there. Dude, that has massive, massive repercussions. And what we doing over here? We acting like we playing suburban basketball somewhere where every time I half breathe on somebody, they're gonna tweet the whistle. Toot! Like, you breathe on them, toot, you touch them in the back, toot. Like that's what we acting like. Like we got set rules. You pass to me, I pass to you. We run down the court, lay it up. Dude, we in Rucker Park. You try to lay it up, I might chin check you. Right? Like this is we are not we are not playing organized AAU age 11 basketball. They out here chin checking. Right? And I listen, what you should know is I did go to basketball practice one time. I never went back. Coach Worthy about killed me that day, and I never went back. I can't play no basketball, child, which means I ain't never stepped foot in Rucker Park. But I seen video. I seen Kobe Bryant on his back in Rucker Park, right? I've seen how people play who the LeBron GOAT versus MJ GOAT discussion. When you start getting old heads talking about this fight between the or who's the greatest of all time, one of the primary things people say is LeBron is too. If they think Jordan is the GOAT and you shouldn't, LeBron shouldn't even be in this discussion, they'll be like, LeBron too soft. What they mean too soft? They mean Jordan was out there talking about people, mama slapping them in the face, hitting like just bumping up, like what? See, here's what I knew about myself and why I could not play basketball. Because if you hit me in my chin, we about to fight. That's what I knew about at that time in my life. I'm gonna be getting kicked out all the time. My poor son, because he was in my womb, when he first started playing basketball, when he was like 4 or 5 years old, he got kicked out all the time. You know why? Because if somebody hit him, they was gonna think about it next time they played. Because he got that was like transferred to him. And how does he now he like uses it effectively as part of MMA fighting or whatever? But listen, I think it's fascinating when people act like they just so peaceful. Are you peaceful if you ain't never been able to engage in war? Are you just harmless? Are you just harmless? And what I'm learning is we got a lot of harmless people in the world. We got a lot of harmless people. We be talking all this stuff about values this and values that, and we believe that this is the United States of America, number one, blah blah blah, number one in incarcerating our citizens. Number one, in not believing that the poorest among us need to be cared for. I was just at a meeting yesterday, and we were talking about homicides, and again, what comes up? The poor people sitting outside the library. Uh, You can't use certain tactics when people don't have conscience. Ask them what's any of those people's names outside the library. They can't tell you. But let me tell you what. It ain't helpful for me to get on here on Filter Free Friday and be all judgy about other people. Nope. It's about me telling you that when I wrote Spark the Heart, it was important for me. It's important for me. It's important for me to talk about how the time I saw my friend who had postpartum depression that had progressed into paranoid schizophrenia and then was homeless. And one day I saw her. I knew it was her. And I drove right past. You know why I need to tell that story? Because we need to acknowledge that sometimes we've been terrible humans too. And when you've been a terrible human, you know how terrible humans think. If there's one thing that's been chapping my goat all week, it's folks like, I just don't understand. I don't understand. You know what bottom of the barrel thinking is like. Stop it. Especially these folks who call themselves empaths. You know what the darkest among us look like. You know that that's what's sitting up there in that White House. And you still, I just don't understand what's happening. I'm scared. What? What? There are legitimately, what, couple hundred of them and almost 400 million of us. What is even happening right now? But you know what I'm noticing? It don't matter. Every single industry, the calls I'm getting are, how do we comply? How do we play by the rule? And I just keep telling you, based on what I saw at Rucker Park, if I had to play at Rucker Park, you think I'm gonna be like, let me find the people who play by the rules. While we up here mad that them insurrectionists went to jail, I bet you if I went to jail, I'd be pissed and ready to turn on somebody. While we up here talking about they need to be in jail, we just, boy, we are, woo, we love to send somebody to jail, don't we? We love to send somebody to jail. You know, stop it. Okay, did they do something wrong? Probably. But if the person who sent them there ain't in jail, why they in jail? Since we talking about rules, oh my God, 34 felony counts. He ain't in jail. Why they in jail? But what we missing is the kinds of people who will storm a White House are the kinds of people we need. Child, please. You ain't gonna see me out there. Cause first of all, child, look, it took everything in me this week just to even put my clothes on, let alone traveling halfway around the country, climbing up on some walls. And when they start smearing bodily fluids on things, I was completely out because you know I'm particular. But the point is this: there are people who can be influenced. And while we're sitting around talking about what we don't, I don't know. Yes, you do know. I don't understand. Yes, you do understand. You understand very clearly. This week, someone was like, "Well, how does this work for narcissists?" Also, very interesting. Always the edge case. You know, when I did that TED talk about Brad, my neighbor, the pimp, one of the primary questions I get, well, I wonder what happened to him. Brad has a story. Yeah, he has a story. And if you go over there talking to him all the time, you're gonna be outside on the street selling your behind for something. You know what I'm saying? Like you I understand very clearly the dark side, and you do too. And so when folk ain't playing by the rules, you up here got your referee book out going, well, according to page 82, 1A, you can't do that. They doing it. They doing it. So you're going to keep going out here on this basketball court, waiting for somebody in a black and white striped shirt called a referee to tweet their little whistle. And they not, you in the park, Holcombe Rucker built. Ain't no whistle. Ain't no whistle. And so it's always fascinating with me when people say they not their ancestors. Yeah, you not. You ain't got an ounce of the courage. Not even an ounce. We stand here. I was talking to my girlfriend yesterday. We gonna spare names. There's something she had been praying for God for, something she absolutely wants to do, fully capable, and called me on a Thursday talking about, I don't want to. I'm tired. This is hazing. If you don't get your ass in the shower and get dressed, I ain't doing that with you right now. Listen, the circumstances are the reasons why you got to succeed. If you was amazing before you got stress put on you, what? What is, what is it? As soon as the stress come, you like, I can't. Let me get in my nap ministry. All right, go on sleep while the Titanic going down. It's okay to rest. It is not okay to stay asleep. That's where the term woke even came from. What are we doing? What are we doing? Meanwhile, I'm at a meeting yesterday. Homicide numbers are up in Kansas City. I need you to know that most of that is because of the jurisdiction in the North Patrol. And I'm going to need you to know that that's not the most violent zip codes in Kansas City. That ain't where Black folk live. It is Black History Month. I need you to know. And you know why we ain't talking? If that had been Oak Park, Ivanhoe, Santa Fe, it'd be all over the news. We'd be talking about not the victims. We'd be talking about the thuggery of the shooters. I ain't hardly heard about it. They're just talking about the homicide numbers are up. You ain't seen one picture of one shooter. At least I ain't. Y'all let me know if you've seen it. And so what that then creates is people sitting around. And somebody had the nerve to tell me, well, we need discourse. Discourse, make sure your discourse is pointed in the right direction. It shouldn't be pointed at anybody in this room. Man worth almost $400 billion. What is we even talking about? And so while we're sitting in here F around and find out, and that's what they get, and I ain't put my cape on, and I'm gonna, you know what? It be there. It's fine. I accept people for who they are. I read the book, the Let Them theory. I'm all there. Let them. But let me tell you this. Let me tell you what God knows. There's a couple of things you might be wrong about, sugar. And one of them is you ain't as smart as you say you are. Empathy makes us smarter. Empathy is thinking like your opponent. You gonna lose when you can. You gonna be on the court in Rucker Park talking about the game is still being played. You just losing. You just lose. And there's far more of us. What are we even doing? What are we even talking about here? And I am just fascinated by the people who were just such big bad wolves post George Floyd, such big bad wolves. And now, so sending me private DMs, and I love them. Sending me private text messages. I love them. I'm gonna help you as much as I can. You know why? Because I was tired too, honey. I needed a break too, honey. I needed my peace too, honey. I took a couple of weeks. I have the privilege and took a couple of weeks off in December, just reset myself, hanging out with my auntie. And then the work continues. Like, what are we even doing? The people who are the most influenceable right now are the ones who have been harmed by the decisions that they made. Did they make them? Yes. Did they make them because they were racist? Maybe. Did they make them because they were homophobic? Maybe. Did they make them because they were elitist? Maybe. Did they make them because of any number of reasons? Maybe. Maybe. Did they make them because they were stupid? Maybe. But now they're influenceable. And now they can be helpful to the movement. You know, hatefulness got a bridge is like this wide. It's like, you upset? Come on over here. Let's work together. I'm upset too. We upset about different things. Don't matter. Come on over here. Well-meaning people, that bridge so narrow. They like, you said one thing I didn't like in 1965 off the bus. You talk to somebody I disagree with off the bus. You married to somebody who thinks something different than I think. I know you think what I think, but how could you be married to somebody? Never mind, you've been married 45 years. How could you be married to somebody who think that off the bus? I've had people say, well, who your parents are off the bus. The bridge is so narrow. It's so narrow. I've had people not even want to be talking to me because I eat meat. Like, we got the list is just so long. Meanwhile, we're losing because you're not at the local high school gym with the referee. You at the park that Mr. Holcombe Rucker created, and in Harlem. Okay, that's what ain't no rules. They just do whatever they want. Whatever they want. So why I say all that? I remember I'm a huge fan of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I feel like he left us a fantastic plan in the book Chaos or Community. Where do we go from here? And in it, he kind of laid out what our problems were, how we needed to bring people together across different types of lived experience. Poor people, he certainly poor people, but definitely races, different classes of people. Didn't really care if you were gay or not. It certainly worked with women. There was lots of dissension between King and Ella Baker, but they recognized that they needed to work together, even though they didn't quite agree on like gender things, working across religion, just working across all these different areas, and saying to us that the issue is unchecked capitalism. This dude has so much money that he cannot empathize or understand what is happening with the everyday American. You think Elon Musk know the price of eggs? Why would he? Because if I started counting today, I'd never get to how much money he has. I'd never get to my son would never get to how much money he has. When I have my grandchildren will never be able to count to how much money he has. You know why? Because it would take you over 13,000 years to count to $344 billion or whatever number he has. Now, am I saying that the man shouldn't be wealthy? No, I'm just saying, what's the difference between 200 billion and 300 billion? What's the difference between 100 billion and 300 billion? Meanwhile, $880 billion worth of Medicaid benefits have been cut from the people who need health care the most. And while we're sitting around here thinking that's just rural folks and black folks and poor folks, how you think residents, physicians get paid? How do you believe trauma centers stay open? So all the people who work at those trauma centers ain't gonna be able to get their funding. It is so easy to just throw out these terms that I believe are in bad faith and, quite frankly, intellectually lazy. F around and find out. I'm protecting my peace. That's how they voted. That's what they get. Listen, man, the bridge needs to be wide because we out here on Rucker Park, and we need some people who willing to work with some different strategies than maybe we would. King was focused on nonviolent resistance. By the end of it, the Minister Malcolm X was like, I'll work with anybody because I recognize what I'm up against. Anybody. And you had Brother Kwame Ture saying, listen, the way we have to attack them in the way that they are attacking us. You had Huey P. Newton only having about 5,000 people following the Black Panther movement, and they like, listen, what we gonna do is on the ground. We gonna make sure people get fed. That's what we gonna do. With the exception of Kwame Ture, all of them were assassinated. Every single last one of them. Think about that. Because when you think about that, you don't have to say, well, what about being empathetic to a narcissist? You already understand narcissism. A man says, I am going to lay down my life and God loves all people. And all I want to do is be able to have an equal chance with a PhD, Baptist minister, whatever. And shot in the head. Stop looking away from that. That's Rucker Park. That's what it is. Understanding what another person thinks, feels, and believes is empathy. Many of you have been watching me for a while. You know I read fiction, and the Lincoln Rhyme series is a criminologist. You have to get in the mind of a serial killer in order to stop a serial killer. I'm not a basketball player. I'm not. I probably wouldn't do well in an organized game. But I understand throwing bows. And what's happening right now, we having bows thrown. And what my son would tell me is Mom, when you're angry, the brain's not going to the right part of the brain, or the blood's not going to the right part of the brain. So you have to be able to stay calm, remember your training when you're in the ring. What does that mean for us? Stop saying you just don't understand. Stop acting surprised. Get out the bed and take a shower, put your clothes on. What are you doing? And you do that in the space where you sit. And it does not matter where that space is. And why do you do that? Because at the end of all these data points, there are people. And you know that. And the way you know that is because when you lose your job, you want somebody to care. When somebody has treated you unfairly, you want someone to care. So don't wait until it's you. Don't do that. It's ugly. It's rugged individualism and also unchecked. And I don't think, we got these things don't pour from an empty cup, all these little sayings we had. Well, I can't pour from an empty cup. But if I got my cup is half full and your cup is empty, I'm gonna let you just dehydrate and die. We need each other. And the people who don't understand that, they're doing exactly what you would expect them to do. We have collectively voted them in. Here's where we are. But isn't it? Some of you have very exceptional skill, talent, and ability. Use it. Use it. I don't work in healthcare no more than I know how to play basketball. You know what you need for a system to function effectively. You in a leadership role, use your voice. Sometimes you got to tell Diddy no, in the words of Cat Williams. You work in a school system, you know what your mission says about how to take care of children. You a politician, you know how to navigate these systems to be able to get the vote you need. Do it. Stop leaning into I'm not what I'm not. Okay. Meanwhile, we're over here rearranging chairs on the deck of the Titanic. Somebody told me, well, it's this ain't the worst it's ever been. What are you talking about? We talking about putting the president's face on a $250 bill. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Now, Black people have certainly had it worse, but when you look collectively at our entire nation, what are we even talking about? This is why. Give me this moment for a second. I should not be doing this. I'm saying it before I even say it. I should not be doing this. But this is why I said before we got here, you don't want a businessman in the White House. You know why you don't want a businessman in the White House? Businessmen make decisions that's best for them to make money. Unchecked capitalism. That is not how a nation is supposed to run. I should want there to be internet access in rural communities, right? Like I should want that. It's actually not safe for people to be going hungry. Let me tell you, people say absolute power corrupts. It was Trevor Noah who said absolute powerlessness corrupts. And I said, you know what? I understand that. Because when you desperate, you do desperate things. And so let me be out there on Rucker Park and let me get slapped in the face. Look, how long you think it's gonna be before I go get a tool? You ain't gonna slap me but so many times. And I'm just like, based on what I'm watching here, most of y'all ain't about active resistance. So we need to be trying to figure out how to pull along those people who are about active resistance and direct that energy towards where it needs to go. It's called mobilization. And mobilization is just manipulation by a different name. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. We got work to do.